This is Seam Notes. Taste, standards, and the decisions nobody sees.
You spent time building your standards, your principles, the version of yourself that you respect. And then the pressure shows up. Mm-hmm. You know, I know this. We all do. And in about 30 seconds, you find out exactly how real that is. Because pressure does not build character. It reveals it. Right? Today, we're going to find out who shows up when things get hard and what it takes to make sure that person is always you. The authentic you, right? Is what we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. The luxury is having a standard solid enough that the pressure doesn't rewrite it. Mm-hmm. Working your main standard, not scrambling for it. Right? Which is huge, right? Because we all kind of, you know, even as much as we talk and we do these podcasts, right? I kind of lose it every now and again. Mm-hmm, you know, I did. You walked in this morning and I was like, everything was kind of going left a little bit. And I was not centered on self.
Yeah.
Right.
When I think of pressure and who shows up without the standard or whom I had show up before the standard was in place under pressure.
Standard meaning the authentic self.
Correct. Right. The building of a self that's solid enough or knows oneself enough, the introspective you, the one that you have chosen to create, not the one that you have defaulted into. Correct?
Yeah.
So for me, always under pressure, what showed up was a version of me that was still a child. It was the 3-year-old rebellious child that didn't want to be told what to do, how to do it, when to do it.
Right.
Or anything. So I think that for a lot of us, the default can be that.
For sure.
The immature child that has not had the opportunity to heal, to grow, to find itself, to learn who one is, right?
Or even be aware that all that work needs to be done.
Right. The awareness isn't there because you're coming from a reactive space.
Yeah.
You're not acting on. You are reacting
to. For sure.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it was fear. It wasn't for me acting as the bratty child. I don't know that I ever was a bratty child. I was a fearful child, unfortunately. Right? So for me, it was really covering up all the fear, the weakness, as it were, and acting uber macho. I'm the guy.
Yeah, you've mentioned the...
You know? So I overcompensated in that lane because that's what I thought I should do, right? Until, you know, I started working on awareness or just really found out that, you know what? I need to start connecting to whoever is really all the versions that are in here, right?
Yeah.
And then when I started doing that, right, through therapy and then Buddhism, etc., then I started connecting and loving all the versions of self. Then realizing that the pressure that I would put myself under, the circumstances are always going to be there. The car's going to break down. The baby's going to cry. The train's going to be late. Financial stuff is going to happen. Everything's going to go like this because life is designed to do that. It's how we react to all those things. So when I realized that I had a choice in how I react to life's shit, then that was the game changer for me. I'm like, you mean I don't have to freak out and punch walls? Because I think I told you this. I went to anger management.
Oh, no.
Everybody thinks that, James is always,
No, I didn't know you had done management. No,
So
I knew that you had been working towards healing that part, but I didn't realize that you had done anger management.
My mother had passed away. This was 2014. And when she died, I was just not dealing with stress. I would show up in an angry way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was punching walls. I'm not exaggerating. My therapist said, you need to go in anger management. And I did. And it was so cathartic because I realized all the versions of self that I wasn't connecting to and I was repressing. Right. And then through that, right, eventually learned that all that anxiety and stress and fear and whatever it is that we go to didn't actually exist. They were feelings that I created that I was grasping onto and holding onto instead of relating to the real self and then handling the situation from that moment. Right.
Yeah. When I talk about that child of 3, she turned into an incredibly fearful and insecure child by 4. Right. So the bratty 3-year-old is the one that rejects everything. And then the other reaction that could take place was I would be so afraid that I would become completely agreeable to things because it was better to go along in order to get along. Right?
Yeah.
So,
which I think so many of us do, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And what I mean by bratty is why? I wanted to know the reason behind everything. I wanted to get every little detail. And I was a tiny little thing. And I would be like, why?
Wow. So I must be bratty because I still ask why about everything.
But I still do. I still do because I want to get to the bottom line of things so that I can internalize them and absorb them in a way that they become a part of me.
Really understanding them.
Exactly. So that it's not a card within a file in my memory. It is a full file with chapters and a story that I can refer back to. So the curious part of me is the part that taps into intelligence, is the part of me that always wants to learn something new every day. It's that part. But she was squashed, and she then became this very fearful, insecure kid until I went off to boarding school, that I was able to kind of reconnect to the earlier child. But no matter which way you look at it, that reactive self is a very unconscious being that's a part of you. And so it's about how do we get to the person that we need to bring out? How do we nurture that child to grow into the adult that, taking the time to be introspective, we can nurture into who we are?
Agreed.
Because when we were discussing doing this topic, one of the things that came up for me, and that I firmly believe, is whatever that reactive person is that shows up is a true essence of who you are, but it is not the you that you connect to.
I mean, it's a part of you,
but
it's not the essence of who you are.
Correct.
Right. They're separate things.
So here's the thing. When, as I've said before, I've been in recovery for quite a long time. And, one of the things that we do is we take inventory and we take a look at things. And one of the big keys or philosophies within those circles is pause before you respond to anything. When you want to be reactive, take a moment, take a pause. Count to 3.
Take a breath,
Take a breath before you respond, because you're responding from a reactive space versus
totally
you that you strive to be or that you are connecting to.
Your nature. And so very similar to Buddhism, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in Buddhism, we believe that the agitated mind is delusional. So usually when we are responding to something and we are reactive, we are in an agitated state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to calm the mind. So you take a breath and just calm the mind.
So fight or flight, chill it out, take a breath.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Have to, right? Turn the mind. A trick for me is, and I said this once and you thought it was kind of cool, turn the mind to stone.
Mm-hmm.
No thought in or out.
Right. Shut it down.
Correct.
For a second.
That will immediately switch my mind from an agitation to a calmness, which then my nature, all of, not just me or you,
right,
the human nature comes out that is kind and compassionate and unstressed. Not saying that we don't have issues that we must deal with. These things in life are going to come up. I'm not saying we repress it. We don't deal with it. Everything's rose-colored glasses.
Because it's all, part of the experience of living life. I mean, all of those things are a part of it.
Absolutely.
We can't avoid them. We can face them with the best attitude that we can, but we can't avoid them.
Correct.
Okay, continue.
Yeah, because the stressed out mind does us no good. The stressed out mind is taking these glasses that I wear and changing the lens to one that is no longer clear. And I put them on and everything's out of focus.
Right.
It's exaggerated.
And it's confusing and it's agitating.
1,000%.
And it's, puzzling and it's all of those things.
Debilitating.
Right?
Stressing does us no good at all. And it's not necessary. We can truly tap into the being that's inside in a calm way and a clear moment and say, oh yeah, now I can see this clearly and make decisions.
So composure, in a way.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. But there is also a really big difference where that act of composure, unless you are in touch with that authentic self, composure could also be suppression.
Totally. A mask, facade, 1,000%. And that's great distinction because we must be distinct about that, right?
Right, because you could take that pause, you could do all those things, but suppress instead of checking with that authentic self in order to investigate or feel or sense or
be aware
of what your next action is going to
be. Right. Exactly. Yeah. That breath in time is going to, all of that's going to happen. And it's not like this is revolutionary. We do this all the time. We have all had instances
every day.
when we've connected with authentic self. We've taken a breath and say, is this necessary? Because we're reactive. And then when we take a step back, we're like, whoa. Maybe I heard that wrong. Maybe I read the text wrong. Maybe the email was all the stuff we built up in our mind didn't exist. But we don't want to have this facade, this composure and say, oh, nothing's really bothering me. I'm just going to repress. No, it's fine. And then we explode. I used to punch the walls.
The punching of the wall.
That was me being composed and not dealing. And in those days, I was a lot younger and not as experienced. So I didn't realize that I wasn't connecting with self. But now I do know the difference. And hopefully through this conversation, some of you out there will be able to tap into, what am I authentically feeling? And taking the moment and the breath out of time to say, hey, am I reacting or is this really what's happening? Right? Can I just take a moment and step back and say, okay, what's really going on with a clear state of mind?
Because look, when I see it in the way that you are expressing it right now, and I know that we differ in points of views about this, I believe that every feeling is valid within its, it's.
And I'm not saying that they're not valid. Of course, you need to respect them.
But in my understanding of what you believe through the Buddhist philosophy. They're a figment of our imagination versus an actual thing we need to acknowledge, respect, process, and work through.
And then let it go.
Yes, of course.
Right. But see, so let me back the truck up. In no way am I or the Buddhist way of teaching or Buddha saying that feelings are not valid.
Well, that they don't exist. What you said.
But what we're pointing out is that we are grasping at this feeling. I am hurt. I am this thing. We are grasping at them and giving them power, which they do not have. We are creating the importance of these things. So then Buddha taught, because they are not intrinsic, they do not exist in the way we perceive them. We give them more power, is what he's saying, than necessary. Acknowledge, work through, do put the work in, but do not base your worth on this thing, because that's what's happened. Let's just be clear. In the moment of any one of these feelings, we become that feeling. We have attached to it, right? I'm angry. I'm an angry person. No, you have an angry feeling. You're not an angry person.
Acknowledge that feeling.
Anxiety, but I do not have anxiety. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Etc.
In that way, I fully agree.
Yeah. So
right?
that's the clarity.
I fully agree.
Right.
Because I think that we all have all these feelings, and we either acknowledge them, view them, and review them,
or repress them,
become them.
Yeah. Right.
Or repress them, suppress them in a way that then all they're doing is boiling under the surface.
Right.
I mean, look at what's happening in our society today.
Correct.
In the United States, I'm referring to right now, right? I mean, there were so many actions that were so suppressed for so many years, and now everybody is reacting on them instead of looking at them, assessing them, seeing what their real perspective, their authentic perspective is on all of these things. They're just taking on whatever is there. And if they don't want to look at it, they're suppressing it or rejecting it or doing all of these things, right? And so...
and the stress comes in.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
The next evolution of all of that is, okay, I'm going to stress out about it, right? About the thing. And I was feeling it this morning when this lovely lady walked in, but then I was able to let it go. I just like, what am I stressing about? Think about the things. This is happening. And that's it.
Yeah.
Like any of these feelings.
And one of the things that I said to you is talk about it. Talk it through, because a lot of times we take it and then we're like, and then we internalize it and then we suppress it and then we're sitting there and it's like, no. It's okay, right? But it's not
okay. I'm fine.
Exactly. It's not okay, right? It's like, God, this rubbed me the wrong way, and da-da-da. And then dump it. Let it go.
You really can. I'm telling you,
let it go. It has no significance.
It has no strength or power. We give it power. You know how they say, you know how the old adage is words have power? Well, they have power when we give them power. Yeah. I used to get upset when somebody said this thing to me. But why does it have power over me now? I don't truly believe that.
Right.
And we let it go. And I moved on.
Because that part of you that heard that, took it from that file of 40 years ago or 45 years ago, that file that has never been rewritten, that file that was written all those years ago, and you've not taken the time to update it. To give it new data, to give it new information. So until you do that, when this goes back to episode 3, where we talked about building the foundation.
Totally. This is all about building that new foundation. That's exactly what we're saying.
Exactly.
Go back to that file. Update it.
You go back to that file and you go, oh no, this doesn't necessarily mean that. It could mean A, B, C, D, E, E, F, G, depending on the situation, where I am, what I'm doing.
Where the mind is at.
Exactly.
It's all about the way the mind is perceived.
What is my lens like today?
Correct. Absolutely.
And then you go from there.
Yeah. Correct.
So the pause that we're talking about and that moment that we're talking about is that moment that you take to check with
self.
You.
Yeah.
With the you within, with the quiet mind
Yes.
that we talk about
Totally.
all the time.
Yeah.
Because the luxury lies here in being able to not be reactive, being able to look at things from a perspective that all of life
Yes.
happens, all of the colors happen to all of us in this human experience. How we deal with and how we work through it
Absolutely.
is the key to it all.
How we're reacting to all the left turns. You know, I was asked to be on a panel a couple of days ago out in New Jersey, and an interesting experience happened. So after the talk, I said a bunch of stuff, building and renovation and et cetera. And I weave in this fabric of our discussion into everything I do constantly. So these two lovely people were in a hallway. We were talking about their renovation. One of the persons was really upset about a tile work that she had in her home, and she was really stressed about it. And the other woman was trying to calm her down. And I gave her some suggestions on physically what to do to resolve the tile issue. And the other one was going, oh my goodness, my renovation. But I pointed this out, exactly what we're talking about here. You are fooling yourself if you think that this renovation is going to go perfect. I said, what so far in your life has gone perfect? Have you not had an experience where the car turns left all of a sudden and life dumps you out? And she said, of course. I said, so why should your renovation be any different? Expect those things to happen. What must change is the way you see them and deal with it and perceive it. That is what must change. Because we're all fooling ourselves if we don't think that the opportunity for stress is going to arise, because it will. It is in the nature of the world we live in, especially in today's world. But we must see it differently. We must react differently. Right? Because if we're going to get stressed out when every time the world does something, forget about it. We're never going to get out of bed.
Here's the other thing. Okay, so I'm going to share a quick experience that I had recently. You know, you'll notice that I have a lot of different glasses. I've been wearing now for a little bit over a decade. Recently, I bought a pair of glasses and we kept getting them adjusted. And for some reason, they just weren't sitting correctly on my face. Okay, so I go in and it wasn't the usual people. It was Sunday. I mean, brand new glasses. I've had them maybe a couple of weeks. And when he starts to adjust them, and the whole piece breaks right off of the glass. And I just looked at him and I was like, okay. He doesn't know what to do with himself because of what happened. And I said, well, you know, your colleague ordered another pair for me because we wanted to try another color. So you have the other color in case that nothing happens. And he's still all frazzled. And I'm like, don't worry about it. He's like, and I, you know, said, no big deal.
And having compassion for him, which you did totally.
So I walk away. My husband and I leave. And I looked at him and I said, wow, he really got rattled by this thing happening.
He's in front of a customer in a store. It's his work. I mean,
and
we can all relate.
Says, because most people wouldn't have reacted the way you did either.
Of course. No, that's why I said she handled it with compassion right off the bat.
Lost it. And my answer to my husband was, it's just a pair of glasses.
The reality of the situation, that's all it is.
Exactly.
Not worth stressing it.
In the grand scheme of things, it can be repaired, it can be fixed, it can be changed. So many things. Another thing, we don't need to be reactive to all these little things. You know, there's only two things in life that are the big parts of life, right? We're born and we die. Everything in between has a solution, a way around it, an adapted phase, whatever it is, no matter how bad or good that is, right? So,
but I really want to touch that you had compassion for this other living being who was stressing out. because a client
Absolutely.
could have said all kind of nasty things or not even care or be aware that this other living being was suffering over their own actions, but still that they were suffering.
It was just like, it's no
Wow.
big deal.
Yeah.
Like, it was like,
How
it's,
wonderful.
because it isn't. And so that's one thing. And the other part of this that and maybe you'll have something to share with this as well. In the recovery circles, right? And even in the non-recovery, is people using things as an excuse. Okay? Well, we can't crutch on parts of life either. Where is the growth in that?
No, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, because all of this, we go back to episode 3, where we're talking about building the foundation. Now we're talking about what that foundation is created out of and how having that be solid is not reactive. It's proactive and it's active.
Agree.
Being able to find tools to deal with it and not use it as an excuse. The same way that you don't use addiction as an excuse, you don't use any of these things as an excuse. They should be eye openers to discovering another way, another lens with which you can view all these things.
Very similar to when we said we're grasping at this feeling and now it's become us. I am.
Exactly.
I am broken. I'm hurt. I'm angry. I have anxiety. I'm not saying any of those things don't exist.
They do.
But they do not have to become us, just like you're saying, right? So the excuse or whatever does not have to define who the person is and say, oh, well, because of this, I can't do these things. We can still have growth and realize we are grasping and now we have made our identity this thing.
Exactly.
Instead of saying it's a part of us. Different. And eventually finding growth around it and ways to work with it instead of it becoming our identity. We're grasping onto the stress and being reactive to a situation instead of having a clear mind. I didn't have a clear mind this morning. And I work on this,
but
right?
You acknowledged it.
Right. Totally.
You took the time to express it, observe it, and recognize that it was what it was and that it wasn't a you. It did not.
It wasn't who I am. No, it was a moment in time. It was where my mind was at that moment. My mind was reacting in a negative way to stuff and agitated. And then when she walked in the door, I admitted it. I heard it out loud. And then that's when the shift came. And now, at this moment, my mind is very calm and actually joyous right now. So just let it go. Yeah. Isn't that funny how we can realize that you can go from a stressed out mind, an agitated mind, to a joyful mind?
Right. Just by observing it.
You really can.
Just by
I did
observing it.
That's it. Exactly.
Yeah. What a great conversation because, there's so many ways to go with this and so much more that we can expand on about this topic. But it is that you can convert anything into something else, into a joyous experience.
Because we're choosing to do that.
Positive experience. And not in the oblivion or delusion or any of that. In the, oh my God, that was just a moment, a fleeting moment that just happened.
That's it.
No big deal. Let's move on and get the joy. Laugh at yourself. We need to do that.
I really do.
Be able to do that.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah. So we've talked about standards, we've talked about principles, we've talked about really this particular conversation was about acting versus reacting.
Correct.
So as our usual closing that we like to do, we'd like to leave you with a thought for the week. And this week is when something tests you, pause before you respond. And then notice who shows up during that pause.
Correct.
And that is your real answer.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
This is Seam Notes. Luxury from the inside out.
New episodes every Wednesday. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for joining us.